Inklings, Octoling, Splatoon. It's more than a linear path. It's a prism of endless possibility, where a single choice can branch out into infinite realities, creating alternate worlds from the ones you know. I'm Gus. I'm your guide through these vast new realities. The Splatoon gaming universe is getting bigger, but there are some details that were shown to us initially that would make us ponder the question, what if? Let's take a look at different Splatoon weapon scenarios the game could have taken and discuss the potential outcomes. What if the weapons shown in the initial Splatoon 3 trailer retained their kits? Splatoon has a tradition of showing off gameplay only to make some changes to the final product. They do provide a disclaimer that things are always subject to change, but it does make you wonder, what would have happened if things stayed how they were shown? In prior trailers and photos, we saw multiple weapons with different subs and different specials, but there are two weapons that make me question a lot of things if they received their beta kits. At one point, Splash had Zipcaster and Sloshing Machine had Killer Whale 5.1. The unique thing about these two weapons in particular is that they define the very early meta of Splatoon 3. If Splash and Machine never got their respective launch kits, what would have changed? Of these two, I think Splash has the most implications on the timeline. If it would have gotten Zipcaster as opposed to Crab Tank, the metas we've known and the meta we know today may not look the same. I'd argue that if Splash never got Crab Tank meta would have never happened. Arguably, Crab Tank rose to prominence because of the perfect synergy it had with Splash and Burst Bomb, a shooter weapon with very short range and decent damage, but considerable painting power with no RNG. If it can paint well, it can output several Crab Tanks, which then solves Splash's range issue and damage output. And if you want to add the icing on the cake, throw in a Burst Bomb to improve its damage output and combo potential. This is one of the primary reasons we did not see other crab weapons utilized in the early meta of Splatoon 3. Either the main weapon was undertuned, the sub weapon provided limited options, or the meta was too slow for it at the time. And continuing with this timeline, if Crab Tank meta didn't happen, what would be the domino effect on future metas? I'd argue that if Crab Tank meta never happened, Inkjet meta would have never happened as well. One of the reasons Inkjet became so strong in the summer of 2023 was because it became a counter to Crab Tank. Not only did Nintendo directly buff this weapon alongside Trizuka and Ultra Stamp to be contenders to counter Crab Tank in version 3.0, it got a follow-up buff in the next patch of 3.1 to give it a damage radius increase. Clearly, Nintendo wanted players to do something with Inkjet, as it became the solution to Crab Tank's chokehold on the meta. I think if Crab Tank was never as dominant as it was, such drastic buffs to Inkjet and other specials wouldn't have been necessary. Well, that's what I'd like to think. Who knows? And if Inkjet meta never happened, would Pencil still have become meta today? I'd argue that Pencil would have still found the timeline where it became dominant and defined the meta. I just think it would have happened sooner rather than later. One of the reasons Pencil was considered quote-unquote bad when it was released was because it had horrible object damage, and it came during a meta where it highlighted that weakness. But if Crab Tank was never as popular, where people were running two of them, maybe people would have experimented with Pencil during its release. And then we would have entered a timeline where Pencil would have become meta sooner rather than later. Obviously, there's a lot more factors to consider, but these are some potential alternate realities that we could have seen. More interestingly, I think if Crab Tank never became so dominant, Nintendo wouldn't have been so hesitant to add more Crab Tank options. When Crab Tank debuted in Splatoon 3, it was on 4 weapons: Splash, Pro, L3, and Dualies. It took well over a year to get 2 more Crab Tank weapons with Stamper and Heavy Edit. Crab Tank is the only new Splatoon 3 special to have the distinct honor of being new at launch, but having the lowest number of kits and the longest time between launch and seasonal updates to get a new kit. And my hypothesis is that Nintendo knew that Crab Tank was really strong and was difficult to adjust. So rather than overcomplicating the special with nerfs and buffs, they decided to hold off on the special altogether from future weapons. And as a result, we probably lost out on 1 or 2 more Crab Tank kits. Splash and Crab Tank went on to define the meta, but if it did have Zipcaster, Would Splash still have become meta? Honestly, yes, but not in the way that we think. Someone in my comments made an interesting theory about Splash and Zipcaster. What if the reason Zipcaster was removed from Splash was because it would be so dominant in Turf War? Turf War has its own unique meta. The weapons that become exceptionally popular are the weapons that paint well, but can also make comeback plays in the last 30 seconds. For example, Stamper is extremely popular in Turf War. It paints decently, but the main strategy to this weapon is to use Zipcaster towards the end of the Turf War match. You pop your Zipcaster and head to the enemy spawn to paint as much as you can to give you that slight percentage lead. So imagine having a shooter that paints incredibly well with Zipcaster using this strategy every Turf War game. I know a lot of people get frustrated with gold arrow spray and how crazy it outputs booyah bombs, but imagine a Splash-O-Matic with Zipcaster going to your spawn at the last 30 seconds and flipping the lead just because they were able to use that strategy. In the same way where Reflux, CDS, and Tri-Slosher Nouveau and Stamper became meta, I'd argue that Splash-O-Matic with Zipcaster would have defined Turf War meta as well. Splash has the most convoluted timeline where its beta kit could have led Splatoon 3 into various alternate realities. But with Sloshing Machine, I don't feel the same way. As shown, Sloshing Machine at one point was supposed to get Killer Whale 5.1. It was probably a last minute change given that even the table turf card for Killer Whale 5.1 showcases a machine alongside it. If Machine had Fizzy Bomb and Killer Whale as opposed to Fizzy Bomb and Booyah Bomb, I don't think Machine would have became a top 3 weapon in the early days of Splatoon 3. Booyah Bomb perfected Machine synergy. Booyah Bomb improved Machine's survivability, and it also gave it an option to pressure from a distance. It complemented the whole idea of Machine and Fizzy Bomb on area denial and considerable pressure. And Killer Whale at its original launch state would have held Machine back. In the same way where Splashdown kept Kensa Machine from rising to top tier prominence in Splatoon 2, I think Killer Whale would have kept Sloshing Machine from defining the meta in Splatoon 3. And if Machine was held back by its special once again, the alternate reality I could have seen happening is Machine not receiving so many back-to-back nerfs. Maybe this is just a consequence of having good synergistic kits. They eventually just get nerfed, and this timeline honestly makes me a bit sad, but I'm happy that Machine had its time in the spotlight. Obviously, there are other weapons we could also talk about and see potential alternate realities. For example, what if Bow still kept the Splat Bomb and Trizuka kit as initially shown? What if it also kept its charge mechanic as shown on one of the OLED trailers? Would these initial designs have changed Stringer's performance in competitive play? And what if the Nintendo intern was right about Line Marker's line damage? Would it have changed Line Marker's potential in Splatoon 3? Well, what if you liked and subscribed? Maybe that would lead to a timeline where an episode 2 would happen. Let me know in the comments that you like to see that video. And also, if you have a cool what if scenario, comment it down below for a chance to be featured in a future video. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.